Okay, I think this is working. All right, cool. I am gonna run with it. Hey, what's up, Eddie? So, hopefully nothing goes wrong with this, but I have never actually tried to start a stream like this before, so we'll see. So, purpose of me doing this is because DH has been showing off this new fucking Trinity of Self. Oh, you can't hear me. Sweet. Thank you. He's been showing off this new Trinity of Self that he's designed. And I love cryptographic puzzles and steganographic puzzles, so I want to try cracking it myself. Because I think I can do it, but I've always been a little bit of an armchair puzzle maker. So I'm going to make this as difficult as I can on myself with the knowledge that I can't help but having, which is that the first Trinity of Self, this one, was a simple substitution cipher where each symbol represents a different letter, and I'm pretty sure that each section referred to mind, body, and spirit. If not spirit, then maybe astral. So just going off that information, I'm going to try to crack this one. I'm pretty damn sure he did a substitution cipher for this too. But I'm not sure. I can see these two symbols right here seem to repeat, which to me says that it is a traditional substitution cipher where he's replacing letters and not using a not oh damn, the word just left my head. He's not replacing sounds or not using it to represent sounds. Oh hey Camilla. Oh, Eddie, you seem to have fucking fingers in all types of little knowledge pots. Good to see you, Camilla. So you would probably be good at this too. I know Camilla is fucking great at puzzles, although I don't know if you've ever tried anything like this. So the assumptions I'm working with here are that it's a substitution cipher. And that, did I just screw that up? Oh, it would help if I'm on the right layer. Constant art problem. Monoalphabetic substitution. Okay, yeah. Eddie knows what the fuck is going on here. But yeah, I'm gonna work off the assumption that the word starts at the center of the triangle and then moves out to the edges, but that could very much be wrong. I think as I break everything down, it will hopefully make itself a little bit clearer. Okay, let's work off that. The four symbols in the upper left. Okay, let me start up here. So I'm pretty sure the way that this works is that that's a big brush. I'm pretty sure the way that he would have done this, if I were to do this, it would start along a center line. It would start along a center line here, and every time it broke away from that line, then that would be a new letter, more or less. So if I had to guess, that would be one. These would be the next ones. And those, oh wait, those aren't the same letters. No. Because this one has a little block at the top, and that one is a dashed line. And then all of them end in a horizontal line. So I'm going to assume that means the end of the word, seeing as how they all have that in common. So this is I'm going to guess that's 4 letters. I'm just going to work with a couple assumptions and move forward with that. Oh, I don't know if it ends here or here. I'll come back to that one. That does look like the same symbol, though, so that can give me some information to work with. And lastly, let's... Okay, so I'm a little bit scared there because all of these seem like they're 4 letters. Huh, I might have bit off a little bit more than I could chew. Okay, let me see. So if I'm working with that assumption that it's mind, body, and spirit. Actually, you know what? Because I don't think... Yeah, in the original Trinity of Self, he definitely had one 4-letter word. I don't remember the exact words he used, and I'm going to resist looking it up. But I wonder if he did change it to mind, body, spirit. And this would be 5 words, which would make that spirit. No, I'm dumb. Spirit has 6 words. 6 letters. Oh boy. Okay, so this is unique, as is this one. This doesn't show up anywhere. And he says there could be 6 letters on the left. Let me see. True, that could be... There could be a letter that's a simple dash there. If that's the case, then that could be spirit, and one of these could be mind and body. So hold on, let me sketch this out. No. It is hard to write with a mouse. Okay, so if that's the assumption I'm working with, we should have D appearing twice and I appearing 3 times. And I don't see... Oh, you know what? Okay, yeah, that symbol repeats right there. So what would that be? No, it's in 2, 3, 4... So if that would be spirit, then that would mean this one would be the R. Which wouldn't appear again. Yeah, I think I know what you're saying right here, Eddie. This, I wish I didn't use such a big brush all of a sudden. Oh, ow. Wrong layer. Why is it always the wrong layer? Yeah, so this could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And all of this could be... That could be 6 letters. And yeah, actually, thank you for reminding me. I could just be working under the wrong assumption. This could all be backwards. So if that's the case, then that would be 1, 2, 3. Third letter is the same as the second letter over here. 3. Okay, yeah. Fuck, Eddie, I think you're right. Okay, so yeah, this would absolutely be spirit if this assumption is correct, which would mean that would be have to be mind because they would both be eyes. Let me work on a different layer here. Oh, yeah, because that's another... Okay. Okay, yeah, getting somewhere here. Eddie, you're a genius. Okay, so then that would mean this one would probably be mind. What's that they say about the assumptions? It makes an ass of you and I. Okay, is there a way to test that? N only appears once. I appears multiple times. M would appear only once under this assumption. So would P, S, and T, and R. This is the difficulty, is that I know enough that apparently substitution ciphers are incredibly easy to crack when you have a large enough sample size. The difficulty with something like this comes from the fact that you don't have a very large sample size. So that's where a little bit of the knowledge about how the first one was set up would be one of the only ones helping me here. One of the only things. So O doesn't appear anywhere else. D does. Okay, so if we assume it's spirit, mind, and body, then that would mean this last letter of this one here would be the same as the third one up there. And that looks correct. Fuck, this might be a short stream. Okay, yeah, so if this is correct, well, I want to test it a little bit. So let me zoom out. Let's delete that. Okay, so working under this assumption, assuming all of this is correct, let's test it. So spirit, oh fuck, what layer is that on? Oh, bastard. Why is... Oh, anti-erase. Okay, there we go. That's way too big. I need an actual drawing tablet. That would make this so much easier. Okay, so it works from the outside in, which is interesting, which means that horizontal line would actually denote the start of a new word. I am curious to see how he would use this in a sentence. I wonder if the word would start with a bar, do all of its squiggles, and then denote the end of a letter with another bar, because if this is an S, and an S can be a horizontal line where the vertical line keeps going, that would mean that the word can keep trailing after an S, obviously. So he would have to break up the words like this. Oh, whoops, I skipped ahead. Me throw in, what was E? Or no, he doesn't even use an E, he just uses a Y. Frequency analysis, thank you. Fucking Eddie is smart. Oh my god. DH, is it all meat in the center? Is it a non-dualist thing? Fuck, if you're watching this right now, call me on Skype if you want to get on or something. Nope, let me just drag that off to the side. In fact, let me... Okay. Yeah, I don't know how else I would test this, although I am going to now look at the book because I feel pretty confident. I guess there would be no way. I'm trying to think right now with this low of a sample size. We don't really have anything to test it against. So I'm not confident in saying this is 100% correct, but because I can't test it against anything, I wonder if he can come on and I can harass him to send me something else to test this with. Again, let me see. What did you use, DH? Let me find that Trinity of Self. Oh, I saw the thing on Sigil Script. I always get a little bit of a chuckle when I see the dress code in your Become the Maelstrom. Okay, I need more light. Hey, I didn't even do the ritual of summoning. Oh, are you there?
Oh my god. I have an echo. Let me turn that off.
Okay.
There we go. What's up, man? Yeah, no, I'm just feeling like crap tonight. So I think I got like 3 hours of sleep in the last 3 days or 4 hours of sleep.
Oh,
My
shit.
eyes are like just like remember when I said goodbye to you yesterday? I
Mm-hmm.
like went to bed and then April woke up for work and I was like, oh fuck. I just stayed up since then, so
Oh,
I had
shit.
about like 2 hours of sleep.
So,
Um
just making sure you know you're on stream right now.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
They can hear me at my worst, it's fine.
Okay.
All right.
If you guys can't hear DH right now, just let me know.
I don't want them to hear me. Destroy them. No, I'm just kidding.
Destroy them.
Let's see. All right, man. Lay your question on me, brother.
So yeah, my question is, do you have any other sigil script with this that's ready? Because I think you put the same stuff on your staff. So do you have any other examples that are
Not that are pretty. No, nothing that I could show that way. I have my notes, but that's about it. Um,
okay?
so much of it's a work in progress, but yeah. But
Because I wanted to see if I could test what I think we've broken here against some other stuff. But I guess could you confirm? Did you
so let me
use mind,
see.
body, and spirit?
Yeah, I did. I definitely used mind, body, and spirit. You pretty much got it. It might help if you flipped your little tiles around so you get the angles correct, but otherwise you got it.
Yeah, I suppose I could. Oh, go away, Skype dongle. Oh, that's gonna... What the hell even happened here?
You broke it. What did you just do to yourself?
GIMP
Oh
is
man.
a very silly program sometimes.
Ooh. I think just one rotation's enough. There we go.
I'm gonna have to rotate everything to go along with it. Hold on. Okay, so now that everything is all crazy and upside down, that actually... Yeah, hold on, that actually made it more complicated over here for me.
Well, at least they're oriented correctly now. So
See, that's interesting. If I would have done it, I would have started from the inside and worked my way out. Was there a reason why it was the way that you did it?
Well, yeah, because in the Trinity of Self, the different aspects are like the centers of three circles of three different Venn diagram, like one Venn diagram with three different circles. So the mind, body, and spirit are um, they're they're the main aspects, and where they all combine, you get the um, subjective objective world, and so it doesn't read. So in other words, the source in that representation does come from the outside in. You are the subjective side is the outside. So if you actually go to the Trinity of Self, um, outside of what you're doing,
Oh, okay.
the original version, it's better.
Well, let me
So
see if
if
I
you go,
can.
yeah, if you go to that one, if you remember from the book, everything outside the outer circle is the unknowable subjective sphere. Everything within that circle becomes more and more subjective until it becomes objective in the very center circle. So the very center circle would be the objective world. And the very, very center is the unknown of the objective world. So like you kind of imagine almost like a gradient, but it's very dense symbolism. So when each one of those points on the Trinity represents an aspect, the mind is the part that reasons, that decides. The spirit is the like Platonic forms that are chosen from the spirit world, basically. And the body is the materia, the prime materia, the substance without form. So before anything has any substance to it, before anything has any form to it, it's the substance. Then between the mind and the body, you have the material world. Between the spirit and the mind, you have the astral world. And between the spirit and the body, you have the void, and the void is the true unknown. It is the everything and nothing. It is opposite from the mind because the mind can't comprehend. In other words, it is everything that exists without a mind to decide and observe it. So, in order for reality to have any bearing, it has to have at least those three elements of self. That's the mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
I
there's other ways. The tripart. It's not even like the tripartite soul, but it's the tripartite. It's the three. It's the divinity of three, basically.
Eddie says the original definitely looks like it's spiraling inwards too,
Yes,
which
there's meant to be a sense of flow into the center. Each one of those influences through to the center. So in other words, your subjective mind um, and your subjective spiritual and your subjective body, they spiral in towards the center of the symbol, symbolizing the act of both motion, but it's meant to be how you influence the objective world, you know. But of course, you'll notice the objective world is within the circle; it's not without, and this puts the primacy of the subjective over the objective. So the subjective is actually the superior aspect, whereas the objective is contained within the subjective, which is true if you really think about it. The objective world is um, it is a thing that the subjective mind decides upon, whereas science would like to pretend the other way around, but even they have to admit that idea exists within their subjective decision. So the objective reality is always within our subjective experience. So therefore, in the Trinity of Self, it is signified as the center. The spiraling aspect was simply done partially as an artistic element. You could just draw the lines directly towards the center if you wanted to, but putting a slight direction to it indicates, potentially a direction of flow, and this could be the direction of flow of consciousness through time or whatever you want it to be. The way it sort of always has, at least in the experience that we have, it always has a subjective direction that, like the arrow of time, always goes in. So you could do it that way, but that was partially just a artistic opinion. But it also, the more important thing that it does is it divides up the wedges of the triangle of the center to kind of demonstrate where the normal human consciousness is mostly focused. So if you go to on the Trinity of Self, where the mind dude is, or the mind triangle is, which would be
Okay.
to the which would actually be to the bottom right, the way you have it right now. It would be close to where your head is.
Was
Um,
okay, gotcha.
so if
That's
that's where the mind is, so you'll notice that in the triangle in the middle, the line that splits it up veers to the left, creating, a clockwise direction. You'll
yeah.
notice that that makes one of the wedges of the triangle a little bit bigger. This signifies the fact that for normal human beings, our focus of attention is mostly on the material with a little bit in the spiritual. You'll notice that the spiritual is essentially just a little bit of a wedge, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And the material is the other way around. So, what this means is our mind is confronted primarily with what it observes more strongly, which is the material. But we have a hard time deducing the deeper meaning of the material world. We have to use a lot of material sciences to understand the material. Like we have to use microscopes and telescopes and things. We really have to delve deeply to understand the material world. Whereas the spiritual world, we don't see very clearly. However, because of the nature of the spirit world being very closely linked to imagination and all this stuff, it's very difficult for us to understand it, but it's not very difficult for us to imagine or to comprehend in that way. So, like, we can kind of go, oh, I would imagine that the spirit world is like this, and it is like that, but we don't experience it directly because our senses are in the material. The ones we rely on are always in the material. So, primarily in the material. So that's what that means. But you could have it basically even. And in fact, one of the objectives of doing the methodology section of that book, mastering meditation, mastering the basics of those things, when you become somewhat more competent, that dividing line actually becomes basically balanced. The objective is to have it so that the dividing line of the triangle is balanced so that they're equal proportions. So you actually see and understand the spirit world and the material to be pretty equally influential in you. Now, a disembodied being like a spirit would actually have those directions reversed. So the spiral effect would actually be going counterclockwise if it was a spiritual mind, if the being was of a spiritual nature. So, for example, a disembodied entity would they experience, so like when you're dreaming, for example, when you're dreaming, that the spiral goes completely the opposite direction. You are way more attuned to the spiritual experience and not the material so much. So the nature of your experience is more spiritual, so it would be reversed. I actually have a Venn diagram series that I do of that when I do mentorship. That I will eventually, if I ever get my video instruction courses done, I'll eventually make a video for that. But
What's crazy to me is that I knew, I knew knowing you that there was a lot of thought put into this, but I
mhm,
didn't actually realize exactly how much, even with.
mhm.
So what you were talking about earlier with it creating a sharper angle, are you referring specifically to this section right here? I don't know if you can see my stream, where, or I don't know how much of a delay there is, I should say,
It's not too
where
bad.
this angle changes
No, 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 no,
to.
no, 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 no. So that's an outer triangle. That's actually the spirit triangle right there. So the little triangle. That's the aspect that influences the center triangle. The center triangle is the
Oh, you're talking about the whole of this right here. Oh, I don't know. Oh, God. Son of a bitch. Go away.
so of course there's a delay. So
Yeah, hold on. Let me just share my screen with you really quick so you can see live.
yeah, I'm gonna
Uh,
whip that out.
yeah, let's do that one. So you're talking about this one that I have highlighted right here.
Yes, that one is spirit. And if you go into the book for the things, it's labeled with an S. So that signifies spirit. Then if you go, 45 degrees up and to the right to the main triangle, you'll notice that the little swoosh, how it's divided. Well, that's another one. That would be the body, where it looks like an F.
Okay, you're talking about this one here?
And the one you're over there now is the mind. That one's the mind
Okay.
that you just zoomed in on. So um, it's almost more useful. Oh boy, you know what? You probably don't know how to pump me into your screen, but I could more easily show with my
I
own
can,
Venn.
no, I have it just straight up ghetto rigged right now, but I can,
Yeah, you'd need the. I don't know if you have the.
if
I think
you, if you share your screen right now, I just dragged Skype over here
okay.
so
Yeah,
they'll be
let's do
able
it like
to
that.
see.
It won't be as clean as the way I do it, but it'll work. Um, oh man,
I'm gonna,
headache.
I'm gonna actually drag you off screen for a second, just in case. Give you a little bit of privacy to get it correct.
Porno.
Of course, I say that, and now I'm just broadcasting my entire fucking desktop to everybody.
Was there a lot of porno? Did I miss it?
I'm actually just checking because this is always the thing I do whenever anybody's tabs or anything is showing is I start analyzing like what have you done? Where is your porn hiding?
Mm.
Everything okay. Everything looks pretty innocent, but I suppose if this video gets taken down, you know why. Oh my god, that fucking what the goddamn oh god, that's what he shares.
Porno. Okay, hopefully I don't fuck this up. You know what? Give me a second. Let me.
And because I didn't say hi earlier, hi aka Morningstar and hello to you too, L the Alchemist.
What's happening?
Oh, and hi to Shadow Doc too.
What's that motherfucker doing?
He's lurking. I don't know if you're listening right now, Shadow Doc, like if you're still listening, but I watched the video you posted and it was I was expecting very dark everything because of the topic of the shadows, but it was very uplifting. I felt, motivated through the first half especially like, yeah, like, you did really good, bro. Bro. I can't speak right
Uh,
now. My
oh my god,
California came
bro.
out.
Oh my god, bro. Yeah, your inner avocado.
So, are you meaning to share your screen right now,
Yep.
or is it
Yep.
just?
I'm just preparing it though.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Just gonna say, because all I can see is Pepe the tentacle monster attacking the ship.
That's right. That's fucking right. Okay. So let me whip this over here. So the theory is this, okay? You have the source, the void, the one, whatever you want to call it. This is the origin, this is the singularity that we are. And once the singularity has once that conscious singularity decides to be an individuated experience, what it does next is it begins to actually not fuck this up. Hold on, where is it? Will it do it? There we go. It will start to split. So you're already starting to see. So it starts off like this, and it starts to split. Now it's not really splitting. It's actually sort of identifying and separating in its awareness different extremes of itself. And as it splits, they become more distinct. And so it's basically a Venn diagram. Now this is not balanced. This is actually the ideal, but this is what it is like to be an embodied being right there. So to keep it simple, we'll just go to, this is the Trinity of Self as a Venn diagram rather than as what we see normally. So if I leave it that way for a moment, it sort of makes it a little bit easier. You'll see that there's the objective world in that very central little, triangle that's sort of a circle. Um, Now you'll notice that that is where all of these different things combine. The objective, that is the everything that can be known in the objective. Now I think you can see my mouse pointer, right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So the mind is where your personal experience and decision and identification is. You are here. Your awareness, your intention, your thought, the animus of perception of duality. This is what decides the differences. This is what makes the decisions between left and right, up and down, hot and cold, here and there, nowhere and somewhere. Anything that's within this circle is the knowable. So, okay. Anything that is outside this circle is something you cannot normally know. Okay. Now, of course, if you return to that original state, you know everything. You are everything. But as you identify yourself, you become less aware of what is outside yourself. And it's a little exaggerated, obviously. In a more realistic, this would probably be like way out here, and there'd just be a little sliver of what is knowable. But you get the idea.
It's
now,
for demonstration purposes more than anything.
Yeah. So each of these is an aspect: the mind, the spirit, and the body. This is an aspect of the source. So the source becomes the mind, the spirit, and the body in terms of they're not really separate, but they're identifiable. They're things that can be sort of ascertained by looking, I guess you could say, by making a distinction in your mind's eye, in your mentality.
Okay.
So there's the three aspects. Now, where the three aspects interact, it creates a plane of experience. So when the mind becomes aware or focuses its attention on the spirit world, on the spirit, excuse me. So where the mind, in other words, the intention, the thought, the perception of duality, meets the ideas themselves, okay? When they combine, you get the astral. And this is the place of dreams, this is the place of ghosts, of spiritual beings, of conscious egregores, the whole works. That happens in the astral. So this is all of the possible ideas that you can choose to experience, that you can know about, that you can distinguish, happens in this segment right here. The opposite is true over here. This is the substance itself. This is the Rorschach ink blot before you look at it. Like, this is the Rorschach ink blot before you make any decisions about what it looks like. It's the stuff, okay? And when your mind interacts with that stuff, it distinguishes differences between different lumps of stuff. And you get this concept of separation between light and dark, hot and cold, etc. But that alone does not quite create the experience of reality. In order for you to have a proper experience of reality, the ideas actually need to overlay with with your ability to distinguish the different bumps. So again, this is the Rorschach ink blot before you experience it. When you're experiencing the Rorschach ink blot, it's this yellow section, but you haven't yet made a decision about anything. So you started to notice, okay, it's light, it's dark, but you haven't decided that it looks like anything. It's still just a blotch on a paper. Once you start to recognize that the blotch looks like a butterfly, then it becomes an objective experience where now it has an identified experience. That makes it an objective experience. So the void is what remains of the source, the one, the highest self that is unknowable, because every bit of it is experienced outside of your mind, okay? But it is made up of what you're made up of, because ultimately all of these things are one thing. And this is different. This gets a little bit into, you kind of have to stretch your brain a little bit. But
it's interesting because I wouldn't necessarily associate the void as not being, I don't know, I guess I haven't thought of that. I would think that there would be some part of the mind in there.
Oh, it is. But the mind, think of it this way. The mind is, if you wanted to see yourself, you need a mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the void would actually be the eye, and the mind would be the mirror.
Okay.
Now normally the eye can't see itself. Okay, your eye can't see itself without a mirror. That's the only way it can see itself. What happens is you become identified with the reflection, not the reality. The reality is always the void, but the void is unknowable though, because it can't observe itself. It needs a reflection. You need to reflect to have an experience of the self. It's like I said, the eye. An eye cannot see itself without something to reflect back what it is. But even then, it doesn't actually see itself. It's only seeing a projection or a reflection of itself. So the conscious mind cannot actually comprehend what spirit and body are like absent itself. So in other words, without the mind to interact with those two things, it can't understand it. So it's always unknowable. Okay, it's always unexperienceable, but it is still the actual source of everything, because it's from that impossible everything and nothing that is made up of all ideas and all substances, but without a mind to comprehend it. So in other words, this would be like the dead universe. This would be there is no mind or consciousness to experience itself. This is the mind trying to experience itself. Now, ultimately, if the individual becomes properly aligned and rejoins source, so to speak, it becomes when you truly ascend or transcend the delusion of Maya, you will have a shrinking of all of this until you lose the distinctions between everything. Then everything becomes known, everything becomes experienced. So the source returns to itself, and it no longer has, it's basically boring, but it also is everything and nothing at the same time.
And this, to clarify with this graphic, this is not so much as if you could flip back to the one distinguishing all the separate parts real quick. So becoming source and all of that is not losing the ability or losing the perception of being at the far ends of spirit, mind, or body. It's not pulling those in to where you cannot experience the far
Mhm.
ends, but rather
Well,
just everything.
to put it
Oops,
to
sorry.
put it another way, right now in our colloquial way of talking about this, we're doing it right now where we are distinguishing our sense of self, of body, and of spirit. We always do this. It's an inborn or learned behavior. I'm not
Yeah,
sure exactly, but
people like we really like oh, pardon me, classifications, and we
mhm. And that's what the mind does. The mind is what
yeah.
does that. So the mind separates out what it experiences. So the spirit is ultimately just one concept, but we observe this one concept, this one archetype, and within this one archetype, it's like it fractures into an infinite number of possible ideas, and we start picking them out and say, okay, this is blue, like this is blue, this is teal, this is green. We start separating these ideas, even though they're all contained within the same spectrum of color. So if you don't understand this, you need to research what Plato's forms are. You need to look up that idea. And it sort of goes back to what I think the true meaning of the Egyptian concept of a true name is. I think when we're talking about true names, what we're really talking about, we're not just talking about a word or something like a sound. We're talking actually about a form. We're talking about the true form of a thing. And then what does that sound like as a word or a concept? What is that? And we translate that into a word or a sound. So that would be like the true name. So, um, sphere, for example, is like a true name, whereas like baseball is a little bit less of a true name. Even though baseball is a true name for a baseball, it is really a sphere, or ultimately that's what it is a sphere. So sphere is the true name of a thing. Um, and you could take that many steps further because everything is a little different. I'm really oversimplifying because each baseball is going to be a little different, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so there's a specific true name for every baseball, and if you really want to be exact. So this is what the mind does, though. The mind, this is another Rorschach ink blot, and when it looks at it, it says, well, that looks like a cow, that looks like a butterfly, that looks like a bee. But it is not it looks like part, it is the word bee, it is the butterfly. So um, when you think of a bee, there's an idealized form of a bee that appears in your mind because you've identified that. You can identify that. You may not always, but you do. In other words, when you think of a bee, there is beeness. There are things that are bee-like. And the simple fact is that a honeybee is not a bee; it's a type of bee. So there's like a nesting. There's a tendency for ideas to nest within each other, till you get to the ultimate idea itself. That is something. That is a form. So you have a form. There's a form that you are. Desmond, there is a form to you, and then there's a lot of little forms that make up what you are. But there is ultimately a form that you are, and that would be in the spirit. Okay, that is what the spirit would be
So
in this diagram.
I maybe this is something I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this, because it's something that I think about here and there, is just that do you think it's important for us to break everything down and try to classifying everything? Do you think that that is important to reaching the self?
No.
Or is that
So it's part of the delusion actually. The more you separate. Now it's not bad. Like, don't mistake what I'm saying as bad. What I'm saying is that Maya is built up of the divisions. So, in other words, when you when you're born, the world is just a cacophony of chaos. You look at the world through newborn eyes that barely work, but as they adjust and begin to work, your mind, it takes a long time to wrap itself around the blobs and make sense of them. At first, it will simply start with, just imagine white noise is basically what it's experiencing, because its
mm-hmm.
senses are not, they're not differentiated properly. It's just a loud, waterfall of sound and a big blazing light and dark blob. And eventually your consciousness starts to distinguish the light and the dark, and the sound from the not sound, or the loud sound from the soft sound. And as it does that, it starts to split reality into smaller and smaller pieces, smaller and smaller ideas, concepts, conceptions, until eventually it's got a working vocabulary. Now that might not be a language, but it is. But it may not be English, but it's a neurological language. You have a neurological language of what reality is, and whatever that looks like in the primordial mind before it learns to talk will be a specific thing. It'll be whatever that is to you. It'll be the experience. It's like a vocabulary. It's a what's the word? Syntax, syntactical. So as your experience learns to split and define all of these little pieces, it's essentially like what a computer does to sound when it's recording sound. So as sound goes into a computer, that analog signal, the kinetic, vibrations in the air, they vibrate the receiver of the microphone. That microphone basically creates an electrical signal. That signal, there's some loss of information, right? Because no microphone is perfect. So there's a loss of information because there's no microphone's perfect, but also those signals aren't perfect. So there's actually two levels of degradation already. Then the next thing that happens, if it's a digital recording device, is it takes those things and it decides to chop them up into a digital format. And there's a loss that happens there too. Now the loss may be imperceptible if it's good enough to the human senses, but to the ultimate reality, it's a very piss poor copy. It would be like it'd be like chopping something up like on a grid, like what you got right there, and
Yeah,
the
I was
lines represent what's lost. Okay, the lines, like, even though those lines are very thin, there's still an element of loss that happens. So digital sound is a lot like what the brain does, or digital imagery, like when we think about pixels. There's a lot of deep information that is lost when we digitize something. Well, the human brain essentially digitizes reality by separating the concepts from one from another. Now, those concepts, although they're separated, doesn't mean that they're not real. It just means that you distinguish them, and in so doing, you actually move further and further away from the source truth itself. The source truth is that all of those forms and ideas exist simultaneously, but you distinguish them from one another. and decide that they're not the same. You decide that there's a difference. And the rules that you come up with to make those distinguishing ideas are complex as fuck. I wouldn't want to try to figure them all out because it's
It's
basically
just
like
too
how
much.
it's just too much. And so this is why many of the better spiritual traditions, the non-theistic, will say, the almost secular ones, they don't care if there's a god or not in the theistic sense. They're metaphysical, I mean, is what I'm really getting at. The metaphysical traditions. What do they almost always teach? Well, they prescribe a practice which will help you to become less distracted by the thoughts, by the individual concepts, and to transcend the concepts and to have gnosis of them or experience of them. You might call it samadhi or satori or gnosis. And this is a state of experience that is active in the moment and it is total. So, like, a memory does not count as true knowledge, it counts as a memory. However, the experience you had that led to the creation of that memory, that is the gnosis. So you are constantly experiencing gnosis. But you're more and more aware of it in the proper context when you are paying attention to it. So when you do meditative exercises and are able to, for example, quiet the chattering mind, and then get your thoughts to just become even feeling in the moment experiences, you're no longer blinded by your thoughts. That you've actually removed one of the distractions of Maya. And that doesn't mean that it's perfect yet, because there's still plenty of ways that you split up the universe, but you've removed that one obstacle. And then thoughts are no longer a constant. They become an optional thing that you use when you really want to just re-enter the world of symbols. So Maya it means many things. There's words that, magic, delusion, illusion, symbols, dream. That's what Maya means. It means all of those things. There is no one word that it compares to. It's all of those words together. So when you are dwelling deep within your mind, in other words, the more cerebral you get, the more intellectual and material and atomistic you get, the more mathematical you get, the more you work with just symbols, the more you're deluded away from the truth. The truth of reality is, well, it's stop. Just right now, stop thinking and just breathe. And don't think about anything, just experience. That is reality right there. Before
So,
you make any
hey,
before you make
are you thinking
any
about it?
judgments on
You're doing it wrong then.
it.
Just
Right. Is the moment now that but at the same time, there's a paradox here, and there always should be. Thoughts aren't evil. You're not supposed to get rid of them. So when you experience thoughts, so the test, the training, the learning is to clear the thoughts. That's like when you can do that, you go, I see what you're saying. My thoughts are a distraction. But you're also supposed to be able to think in the moment and actually have thoughts and still be in that state of awareness. That's like level 2 enlightenment, is to, first you do away with the thoughts, you become one with the experience of the moment. That's not enlightenment, but that's that satori element, that gnosis element. When you return to that state, that's great. But now you've got to be able to also think and then have the thoughts be more of a non-attached experience, where instead of identifying with those thoughts, see, once you've quieted your mind, because most people identify with their thoughts, they think that they're the chattering in their head, but that's not what you are. You're not that chattering. You're actually the silence in between all of that. The thoughts arise, but they're not you're not them. It's kind of
I
like when you look at a sky and the clouds go by, you're not the clouds. The clouds are something that you see. But if you stare at them long enough and that's all you see, you might begin, like, if you can't even see your body, you might begin to believe that you're a cloud or something. That's kind of what's happening to you.
and
You're
I really like there was a thought that was presented to me, not to cut you off, but I want to throw this in there, that that call of the void that I always bring up, where somebody mentioned how sometimes when you have those thoughts, that those thoughts do not necessarily belong to you, in a sense. Like, in non-dualist sense, they do, but in the framework of our day-to-day, of our minds and whatnot, those thoughts do not necessarily belong to you. They are thoughts that are passing through,
So
maybe
think
from.
of thoughts like this. Okay. I gave you the cloud analogy. Maybe give you a little bit better one.
Oh, but
Imagine.
I feel like there was somewhere I was going with that, but I lost it.
Oh,
So yeah.
oh, okay.
Go.
So imagine that you are in the ocean, and in front of you is more or less an infinite number of fish. And you are swimming along, and your eyes are attracted to just different fish. Like you look over this way, there's a pretty blue one. You look over there, there's a green one. Look over there, there's a silver one. Look at that one, it's a big one. Look at that one, it's a small one. That's what your thoughts are. Your thoughts are like fish swimming in a giant ocean. And where your attention goes, your thoughts arise. So your thoughts aren't generated by anything. Your thoughts are always there. Your thoughts are always part of the static of your functioning brain. Now, there may be a limit to the thoughts because it's part of your brain experience. Your brain your left side of your brain is just a fucking chatterbox, just going blah, 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 right?
Yeah,
And
that sounds pretty accurate.
and your consciousness will key in on what it's paying attention to. So when you're, say, having a bad day, your brain might be actually processing thoughts from 20 different possible thought patterns. In other words, your brain might actually be thinking about what to have for dinner, how much you want to have sex with your mate tonight, how much you want to watch TV. And it might also be thinking, your brain might also be thinking about the fight you have with your boss that's giving you a bad day. And your attention will determine what thoughts you think you experience. So your brain is consciously thinking or subconsciously thinking of all of these things. And when your intentional awareness is put onto one sort of spectrum, then it will only see those thoughts relevant to it. And the other ones will just kind of peek in from time to time. This is why you'll be sitting there and you will be maybe in a bad mood thinking about your job and how much of a bad day you had. And then you'll go, you know what, I could really go for a cheeseburger tonight or something. Like a new thought will intrude. That thought's always there. It's just, you just made yourself aware of it. So instead of thinking of it like your thoughts are being generated by your mind is identifying the thoughts. It's picking them out as a spotlight. Imagine the mind as a spotlight. Okay. And your subconscious is the sea where all of this is happening. It's actually the seat of everything. Your subconscious mind is experiencing all of this, and where it directs its attention creates everything. Okay. So that's why I said the school of fish. All of these thoughts are swimming around in your head like a school of fish, and where you direct your attention determines what thoughts you have. Perfect example is if I say, think of a red school bus. It's not hard for you to think of a red school bus because that idea is already in your brain. It's actually, it's echoing around in the process of your brain all the time. And when I tell you to think of it, what happens is your brain, because of that stimulus, will suddenly key in on that idea, and it'll kind of emphasize it. Your attention will go to it basically, and it will appear in your thought process, either visually or just conceptually. The idea of a red school bus will appear. But the red school bus was always there. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's always been there. So we say thoughts arise, and what we really mean is that we're trying to, even though I'm saying the thoughts are always there, and yet I'm saying they arise, what I'm really saying is the experience of thoughts arise from the attention we place. This is why attention is so important. We talk so much in magic about where we put our attention is where we get our manifestations, or where we get our intentions. Our world is based on our attention, on our perception. So where you put your attention is going to determine what kind of thoughts you have.
Yep, what
And
you
that also
find
determines
is determined by what you are looking for.
basically, to a very large extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is an element of objectivity that enters into this because we have what we call essentially a consensual reality matrix. That's a term some people use, and I like that term. We recognize we've separated ourselves out from one another. We've decided we're not the same for the purposes of this experiment of experience. I've decided I'm not you, and you've decided you're not me. But we're still the same thing. But we still each exist within our own subjective bubble of experience. But since we've decided to acknowledge one another, we can influence each other's subjective experience by way of that objective circle in the middle, that objective dot. That is the filter through which we experience one another. Okay, so going back to the Venn diagram, one more little thought before I move on. So this version of the diagram is actually what the average human being, you, me, and everybody, that's what we actually look like in a normal action state of normal life. When you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth and you go to work. For the most part, this is where you are. Your mind, if you notice in the Venn diagram, it's suddenly like almost entirely encompassed in the material.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost entirely aware of the material. Only a little sliver of the astral is within your mind. So in other words, your imagination shuts down and you're just doing what you need to do. Like I'm at work, or I'm writing, or I'm talking, or whatever. Generally speaking, you are fully invested in the material experience. However, if you're disembodied, or you're dreaming, or you're lost in daydream or trance, you'll notice that the mind shifts over towards the spirit side more. It becomes less and less aware of the physical, of the material, and becomes more aware of the astral. So in other words, where your mind is, its attention is, in other words, not where your mind, but where your mind's attention goes, the experience follows. So when you are in your normal everyday life, your mind is on the bodily, on the physical, and the material, the objective, everything you can see, feel, and touch, with only a little bit of imagination and deep thinking and spiritual awareness. When you're sleeping or deep in a meditative ritual or something, where you're having astral vision or something, it's going to look more like this, because now your mind is really focused on this. But you'll notice you didn't go anywhere and you didn't cause anything. Those three things, those different experiences were always there. It was always there. You just shifted which one you're paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you the illusion of one or the other. Now, this version here, where it's very balanced, that is the objective mental state of magic. If you want to do magic properly, you need to have your mind focused properly on, really should be aligned equally between all three. This is actually stage one of gnosis, we should say. So when you're going into ritual, and I'm telling you to enter a trance, I'm saying do the meditations and get yourself into a trance. The early stages of the trance, I don't think anybody can maintain a perfectly balanced state like this intentionally for very long. We do occasionally land on it, and we don't realize it. But maintaining this is difficult, because when you do, what ends up happening is, when you're truly balanced, your perception begins to become closer and closer to the source. You can actually, it's kind of like if you hit a whole fuck ton of psychedelics, you have this happen. Okay, because you recognize that this is not what you are. You're not just this. You recognize you're also this and also this, and so they do join. But in order for that to happen, you have to have a pretty balanced perspective. So, ideally, in magical ritual, you trance yourself into a state where you are aware of the material and the astral equally, if possible. An exception might occur if you're only trying to do an astral working, like you're just trying to like communicate with the spirit. At that point, it actually is very useful to shut your body down by way of deep trance. So if I'm doing astral work, if I really want strong visions, if I really want to like go there in like a dream state or something,
then you just pop a couple Motrin and start surfing.
Right. And start surfing. Now, ideally, I don't do it that way, because that doesn't actually lead to anything. What's better is to keep your mind fully conscious and your body go asleep. So you want your body to become numb, sort of like what DMT and all these things do. It detaches you from your sense of self, at least in the psychic way. I've never experienced this, so I don't know if it detaches you from your sense of body so much, but it definitely detaches you from your sense of self. A similar thing can be done physically by using meditative process, like in the gateway process. That video I did, for those of you watching, about a month or so ago, I did a review of the gateway process. So as you detach from your body basically falls asleep. So if you sit still for like an hour and do deep relaxation and deep breathing, especially if you're using like relaxing music or binaural beats, you don't have to use those things, but they do help. What will happen is your consciousness and subconscious will kind of get bored with this boring body that's not doing anything, and it will literally release sleep chemicals into your body, the sleep paralysis chemicals that you have when you actually fall asleep, and your body will become very comfortably numb, just like as if you're drunk or listening to the song by Pink Floyd. It will become very comfortably numb, and you know in your heart you could easily move at any time, but you won't. You'll until you want to, you just won't. And usually it's preceded by a really intense itch or a scratch, like you have to rub your nose or something.
Yep.
Um, that if you ignore that, like that is the last stop before sleepland for your body. If you ignore that and keep your mind going, just keep thinking, just keep going, but let your body go through that. Within a minute or two, you'll notice like your hands feel like two big swelled up balloons, and like like your body's asleep. You can just tell. But your mind is still going, and you become like a brain in a jar. It's kind of like going into one of those sensory deprivation tanks a little bit, because now you know like your experiences they're muted. Your body, you can still technically feel your body, but it's less important, and you can sort of detach your awareness away from it. Your eyes and your hearing are often the first things to really get interesting experiences, because you'll still usually feel your body for a while, but at some point you kind of can lose control of that and not even feel your body. That's a full detachment, which I've never experienced, but I can get to the point where it's, my mind is detached and my vision and hearing gets a little detached, to the point where I feel like I can really see and hear things up, like a dream, but it's a waking dream for me. It's not as vivid as when I'm actually asleep, but it's really close, sometimes. So that would be when I have leaned into the astral side more, of my awareness, because I've shut my body down, my physical body. My physical body is the conduit through which experience flows of the physical. So you just got a really big crash course on the meanings of the symbols of the Trinity of Self. Of course, to do it properly, I would also have to to
And
do
so,
it properly, I would have to also, I'd have to rotate this, but it's not letting me rotate exactly, but you can see where the void is.
mhm.
You get the idea. So this would correspond to that.
Okay, so you did not use. Okay, Huh. I didn't realize that you used void for the original. It's been a long time since I looked at
Yep.
that.
Yep. So the mind is here where the M is. The mind is what chooses the experiences. So this was meant to be sort of an arcane looking symbol, but I could have just done a Venn diagram, but I felt like this is way more symbolic and meaningful, and it's powerful, and it's also very similar to the Solomon Trinity, which I don't think is an accident. I think that there's a reason why I was sort of guided through this, because I've always recognized the triangle as really the ultimate, um, you know, not the ultimate. It is one of the ultimates, one of the Platonic forms, right? You have circle,
Mm-hmm.
triangle, square. Um, and it is the simplest of them. People might think a circle is the simplest because it's like, well, there's not a lot of angles to it, but it's actually, much more complex because it's made of an infinite number of angles.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the triangle is, so the triangle is the least number of angles that you need to create a two-dimensional anything. So in other words, to create a door, the you need at least three corners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's the simplest, easiest, and most potent form of a door, uh, believe it or not. So that is why I see it as the ultimate gate, because the triangle is the easiest one to crack open. Um, so that's sort of how I was using it. The triangle is the gate. So going back to the swoosh effect, if you recall, from this diagram, let's go to the one where it's material. Yeah, man. There we go. I lost it. So if we're on the material side, if you notice that swoosh, it's favoring the material. It's got a bigger chunk of the material for the mind part. So in other words, the
Okay.
mind is peering in. It only has a little sliver of the astral that it's aware of, at least initially. So when you're living in this world, you would agree that the sights, sounds, feels, smells, touches, all of that is way more important to you than the subtlety of the spirit most of the time. Okay? Most of the
I
time,
see what you were saying with that now.
yeah, most of the time your experience is really focused on this. And to go further towards the body, it becomes harder and harder and harder till it fades off into infinity. To really know the body brings you further from the mind, and the mind has a harder time understanding it. It becomes like a focus point where you just atoms, right? Or quantum mechanics or something. Like it becomes unknowable. And there's even more meaning locked up in here. I don't know if I'll get to it tonight. When you're looking at the spirit, it has the opposite effect. You don't really notice the spirit very much. However, the conceptualization of the spirit is easy. Like I said before, if I said think of an orange fire truck, although I said red school bus before, if I said think of an orange fire truck, it's just going to go boink right in your brain, and that happens right here. And you don't even realize how much of that is your spirit world. You don't even realize that is, but we don't dwell in that space very much because we are grounded, we are based mostly in the material in our experiential life. And unless we're dreaming or lost in daydreams, then that's how it is.
So, something I was thinking about earlier because when I was doing all the people said it in here about how they felt drawn into that center point, and in fact, when I was doing the video editing for you, when I made the graphics that you use for the video, where the Trinity of Self is pulsating outwards, it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, there was when I was sitting there just like, okay, is everything working properly? It was really freaking hypnotic, especially when I reversed those pulsations that they were drawing in. I had to
Mm-hmm.
very quickly stop that because I felt like I was going into some type of trance. So is that very much the intention here
Sure.
of
No, that's
drawing
why.
everything towards the center point, towards source, drawing all these aspects
Yes, to a
closer?
point. It's actually the waves actually go both directions, but most of our experiences in life, we think, because of our perspective, come from the objective, but it doesn't. But we feel like it does. So when you're looking at this thing and the pulses are coming from the center, that's sort of signifying the idea that the experiences, the things that you're interacting with, come from the objective, and that you're kind of rubbing all over them and having experiences of them. But it also, interestingly enough, when an interesting thing about waves like that is when they're pulsing outwards, it also creates the effect as if you're falling into it. In other words,
Almost
when
like
those
everything
little
is uh, zooming past you, like you're going down a tunnel.
exactly, and that's what your consciousness is doing. That's actually what creates the concept of time. Is you're looking at things, and you're flowing. Your consciousness is flowing through reality, the objective reality, whatever conduit that you're in, and it's blowing. You're basically going down a tunnel, and as you go down this tunnel, reality just manifests in a more complex, objective way. Now, going the other way would be like the reverse of time. It would also be going inward. If you reverse that, so that it looks like the pulses are moving in towards the center, you can have a pullback feeling, and you'll probably get a different feeling. Although I would have a harder time saying for sure because I don't use it that way. But you could. Because everything in the center, the other, here's the part where, again, the symbolism here gets crazy. Because this very center circle, again, this is the objective world that you don't see. Okay? The triangle is the objective world that you can understand to a point. The black sections are the subjective planes of experience that you have. So this is actually like the whole thing taken together, right? This swoosh all the way through here, and then this little, not the outer circle, but this black area, and this is all everything that is material that you can know and experience happens here. All of it. This is what you can experience in the objective plane. This is what you experience in the subjective plane. Okay. So this would be like what your body feels like. This would be like what your vision looks like. This is the things that you're looking at and experiencing. This is their own objective sphere. So in other words, everything on the other side, it's like a black hole. You go deep enough in and there's like nothing comes out. But this is also the source of all of this. So I don't want to get into it because it's very, very wordy, very difficult to really explain. But you would also imagine that this is a hyperdimensional object in that this outer ring is actually, so for you, this is an outer ring of experience. Anything that happens like from here outwards, like this, like the black line outwards, is unknowable to you because it's beyond, it's behind your subjective experience. It's the subconscious subjective is on the other side of that. Well, you can also understand that this is a hyperdimensional object in that this very outer edge wraps around through a higher dimension to the inner edge of this circle and represents another person or another conscious experiencer. So if you go deep enough into the center, you come out the other side as something else. Essentially, you meet the other that is you. You return to that source sense of. So if I looked in this circle, I don't mean physically looked into it, but I mean if I metaphorically transcend through this circle, inner circle, long enough, deep enough, fully enough, I will transcend who I think I am and become something else. I will become potentially you or everything potentially. It depends on how far I go. So if this was just between you and I think I'm here, okay, and I think you're over here. But in your version of reality, you think you're here and you think I'm here. But this is like wrapped around through a higher dimension to be one thing. Okay, it hurts your brain to think about it a little bit. Now I could go even further. So the mind is here. This is your conceptual awareness. And it leads ultimately to the body and to the spirit. You will notice that there is a dividing line. Right? This is why I made it a triangle. It's actually really important, although it's maybe not too obvious. When you reach the body, you can know the body up to a point, but then the body becomes unknowable. But then you reach a point where you hit the void and you get the abyss. The abyss is actually it's actually very small. It's the separation between the knowable body, the body you can imagine, and the unknowable and unimaginable body. And you'll notice that the body and the spirit are then, if you think of it that way, they are actually the void, and the spirit and the body are like emanations of the void. Then you can also sort of think of it as the mind as an emanation of the spirit and the body. So within these things, there's always got to be a paradoxical cycle of mutual creation, like Indra's web. They don't function by themselves. They need to create each other. So the spirit. I know it sounds like a whole bunch of bullshit, but trust me, this is all stuff I could repeat 1,000 times. the spirit.
It's much like your books. It's very dense.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you comprehend a piece of it, you go pretty far because you realize that all I've done is I've done the thing I tell you not to do, is I've taken the experience of reality and I've chopped it up into pieces that are frustratingly complex, and I've actually increased Maya by showing you this symbol. I've actually made Maya harder for you. However, an interesting thing happens. Just like when you're doing your cryptography, the more you dwell on a problem, your brain will actually become sort of tranced. It will sort of become in the moment, trying to experience and learn what that is. You'll actually be really engaged in the moment. While you were trying to figure out that symbol, you drowned out a lot of external distractions, and you became very focused on doing the puzzle. While you did that, you were actually experiencing gnosis way more clearly. You were actually in the zone. You actually achieved that alpha state that we talk about, the 10th state of the gateway process. You were in the zone, and when you're in the zone, you are in a form of like lower end, like Zen, Satori, Gnosis, because you're fully invested in that moment. Then the next stage of that is to become aware of that you're doing that, and aware within that moment, so that you know you're having it and not just lost in it. Trying to decipher this symbol.
I wanted to cut you off really quick because maybe it has degrees of relevance to what we're talking about right now, but also something you brought up earlier of the reflections coming from the inner part of the circle to the outer
Hmm.
black sections and then to the outside, eventually looping around. There's
Hmm.
a wonderful little thing I discovered a while back by Orteal called Nested. You could probably see on my screen right now, where it's just a simulation of the universe and all things, and that you start with nothing but the universe, the all, and then you try to see what's in that. And let's go into this one. There's multiple galaxies. Let's go to this arm. Let's keep getting more and more specific. Let's divide this thing up. Let's go to
Yeah.
this planet's life. And just getting more and more specific until eventually it all just starts looping back around upon itself.
Hmm. And it should eventually, if you go small enough, you eventually get down to the big again. Like that's it's kind of like I tell people, if you think of a singularity, a true singularity has infinite smallness. And in that way of thinking, it is equal to infinite bigness. There's actually really no difference because it is so small. It's infinitely small. So it is made up of an infinite amount of negative space. Well, the difference between negative and positive space is just conceptual. It's still like space, right? So the smaller something gets, well, it's kind of like an imploding star creates a black hole. And there's a theory that a black hole punches a hole in the universe and creates another universe on the other side. Um, in that same sense, it would be imploding, and then that implosion would sort of invert and become an explosion on the other side of that. So it's a very similar concept to that too. So yeah, yeah.
That's
Oh, and one last thing.
huh.
The chakras actually they actually overlay onto this model as well. So in the mind, where are we? Here we go. In the mind, you would have the heart, which would be here. You'd have the solar plexus, which would be here. And you have the throat chakra would be here. Now
And
over here, you would have the throat chakra again. Okay, you'd have the third eye, and then you would have the crown. Going the other way, you'd have the solar plexus here. You would have the sacral here, and you'd have the root here. And the root and the sacral, the root and the crown are thought to be connected, at least in the system that I use. Now, this means the solar plexus is where the material world manifests. The third eye is where the astral manifests. Where we interact with the objective plane is through the sacral. I'm sorry, the throat chakra is where the astral manifests. Excuse me, because it's communicative. The third eye is where we experience the objective version. Same thing with the sacral. And the heart is where the mind really manifests and interacts with the objective, because that's what decides good, bad, up, down, left, right. Preferences is basically what the heart chakra means. So this has so many layers and so many ways it fits together.
I was
And I'm kind of losing my voice because I'm kind of because of lack of sleep, I'm kind of making myself sick. So
was the chakra thing something intentionally put in that? It seems kind of like a happy accident.
it was a happy accident. It was a very happy accident, yes. But it fit perfectly. I'm like, oh shit. And then you would still have, if you use the many different versions of the chakra system. There's like 114 in I think the ultimate version. But then a lot of systems will have the 7 main and then 2 extra, 1 outside, 1 inside. There's ways you could work that into the symbolism as well. The one outside would be in the center. The one below the root, and the one above the crown would be on the outside. So,
Okay.
so this would be the one that's below the root would be the objective sphere, and then the one above the crown would be here. So yeah, So, any other questions on your? I know you just wanted to do a cipher, but I basically gave you something
No,
to
I
decipher. Watch this video over and over till you understand what I'm saying.
no, I think that was great, especially for everybody watching, because that would be a little bit disappointing if it just took me 10 minutes of explanation and then 10 minutes of figuring this shit out. That was
I know.
actually
I was like, wow, he figured it out so fast. This is boring. I better come on.
you weren't
Well, it
wrong.
wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be like a cipher. Like it wasn't meant to be a hidden language. It
Yeah,
was actually just meant to be.
it,
Well, I told you the story behind it, which I'll probably tell eventually. But
yeah, it. I think there's power in that, of because when I look at that Trinity of Self you have on the screen, I see my mind is fixated on the words and then exploring their meaning and whatnot. Whereas if they are symbols that I don't recognize, even when I know what is behind them, it is so much
mhm,
easier to look past them and just take them objectively.
sure.
So,
Which is one reason why I have the version where it's not in English. That's actually one of the
exactly.
intentions. Yeah, that's exactly right. Um, your subconscious knows because you know what the words are supposed to be, but your conscious mind just ignores it. That's
Hmm.
why I tell people when you create a magical alphabet like that, um, some people will argue and they'll say, "Oh, you should learn your Enochian, your this and your that." That's fine for Enochian and stuff, but for the purpose of this language, it's more like making it so that everything written is like a sigil, and it makes it easier to penetrate your subconscious mind. Don't try to learn the language of. So when you create a magical
Yeah.
alphabet yourself, or if you use mine, whatever you do, don't try to memorize the letters. It'll be impossible not to memorize one or two, but because you're just going to do it. Your brain's going to say, I want to remember it.
Hmm.
If you end up memorizing the whole thing, it's time to create a new one. Um, you want them to remain mysterious. Whenever you look at them and you go, wow, what the fuck does that mean? Right? You don't want to have it be like when you see the word void on the screen, you see the word void,
Yep.
right? It's like you can't see anything but the word void. However, if I had the which I don't, do I have it here somewhere? Where is it?
If I've got it on my screen here. If you just see, that, you don't know what the fuck that is.
Yeah, I can't see
I
that enough here.
I've I've
Yeah,
started I've
exactly. Like that. Like your conscious mind just glosses over because it's not trained to really recognize that. So your subconscious mind, however, is a sponge, and it goes, yes, the void. I know what you're talking about.
I've done that with making sigils, in not in a very loose sense of the word, where I will take the entire, the sentence of "this is my intent," and then I will, just let something flow through me of, okay, page 11. I'll grab my dictionary, go to page 11, whatever the first word that pops out at me, that's
Hmm.
my key. I'll go, into some type of cipher and I'll put my sentence of intent and then run it through. I'll encrypt it using that word as my key. And I'll get a bunch of goobly gop and I'll look at it and I'll try to separate it out into, this looks like a word, that looks like a word, and I'll create a mantra out of that
Hmm.
that I can repeat to myself over and over. Some part of my brain remembers exactly how I came to that, but by the time I actually get around to using it, I can't tell you what the specific words or it's so lost to me. It's just the experience of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way to do. But that's why I recommend the magical alphabet. It's a very similar way, but it's maybe less complicated. And you do it once and it's done. You don't have to do
Hmm.
a cipher each time. And it's kind of like creating sigils normally. Like normally when you create a sigil, you get your word, you do letter replacement or whatever, simplification. If you say like Five Nights at Freddy's, well, you got like five F's you don't need. You only need one. So you simplify it down, get all your vowels out, just use the consonants. Any repeating ones you ignore, and then do something to randomize it, and then use that to create your sigil somehow. So yeah. So anyway, dude, I'm
But
gonna bounce because I need to get some sleep and a
yeah,
little bit of
go
food.
go rest, and I've got a boyfriend to get to who really wants to watch the last Matrix movie.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah. I hate that. I like the first one the best. I will.
For
Second one stunk, and the third one was decent.
Oh, you know what? We'll have a whole fucking discussion about The Matrix and me defending the latter movies. I will admit they weren't as good, but I
You
still.
cannot defend the second one. You can defend the third one. I'll give you some defense of the third one, but you cannot defend the second one. It is just
That's interesting because I would consider the third one less defensible,
maybe I
defendable.
don't know. The first one is the only one you need to see. The other two are just like
Yeah.
you want to watch the characters at that point. The first one tells you everything you need to know. The first one's the most poignant and important. The second one pissed me off because of the fighting. It just sucked. It was just
Okay,
like
yeah, that wasn't as great. Yeah.
no, because it's like he just does the same 5 moves for like 10 minutes straight against different people in different directions. It's like pa pa
The
pa 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 slap pa pa pa. It's like, all right, how many times can you do the same move, dude? Come on,
the the first movie was great because if you wanted an action movie, you had it. If you wanted something deep and philosophical, you had it. Whereas the second movie was like, okay, well, we know we are in for a trilogy. We've got to. The action wasn't as interesting. It was all just lore, lore, lore,
hmm
lore.
yeah. And the third one, it still threw a few cliffhangers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a few no, you know what I mean. Hard turns, I should say, hairpin turns.
Mm-hmm.
So plot points. Anyway, I'm getting shot, dude. I can't think anymore.
But yeah,
I gave you the last of my brain cells tonight. So.
and I thank you for that, and I think everybody in chat is probably pretty grateful for that too. So
Woo!
it was fucking
Thank you.
good talking to you, man. And
Sub to my buddy Epson. Look at you. You got 51 already. We need to share the love with
oh
everybody.
shit, did I break 50? Oh fuck.
Yeah, you broke 50. Yeah. Send some of that my way. What the fuck, guys? I recognize everybody here. I see everybody.
Yeah,
So, all
all
right,
good
dude.
people.
I will bounce out of here like a ball. So you can wrap your stream up, and I'm gonna go to sleep now.
All right. Well, have a good night, man.
All right.
I'll see you later.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, that was I I honestly wasn't expecting that. I expected that that would take me longer, but fucking big ups to Dr. Eddie Romanov for he actually I don't know if I would have solved it so quickly without him because he set my mind on the right path and reminding me, oh yeah, it was just an assumption working from the outside in. I need to flip and reverse this. Or no, inside out is what I did. So fucking I hope this was interesting for all of you. I hope you enjoyed the stream and have a good night. Fucking mind the shadows.